When I first bought my property on the outskirts of town, I never thought owning a simple water reservoir would turn me into public enemy number one for the HOA. The land had been in my family for decades, complete with a private dam my grandfather built back in the 70s. And that dam fed directly into a reservoir that was technically part of my property deed. I maintained it myself, repaired the spillway after storms, cleared debris, and even paid the county for a private water use permit. But to the HOA, that dam represented something they couldn't control, and if there's one thing Karen, our HOA president, hated more than anything, it was losing control. At first, she played nice, showing up on my porch with store-bought cookies, asking politely about my water setup and hinting that the community could benefit if I allowed shared access. I told her point blank that it wasn't happening. The reservoir wasn't some public pool. It was private property. That's when her tone shifted. Within weeks, I was bombarded with letters citing fabricated violations, like unauthorized landscaping and excessive resource hoarding. The last straw came when I received an official notice. The HOA had fined me $15,000 for owning too much water. I actually laughed out loud when I read it. Too much water. That wasn't even a thing. But the letter was stamped and signed by Karen herself, warning me that failure to comply would result in community action. That was the exact moment I decided I wasn't going to let them bully me. If they wanted a fight over water, I was prepared to drown their arrogance literally. Asterisk. The weeks that followed were like living in a chess match where my opponent thought they were the only one playing. Karen started sending patrolsies, actual volunteers from the HOA board who would stand at the edge of my property line with clipboards, scribbling notes every time I so much as watered my garden. One guy even crouched behind my fence, trying to count how many minutes my sprinkler system ran. They were desperate to prove I was abusing community resources, even though the reservoir sat fully within my property boundaries. Then came the smear campaign. Karen went door to door in our neighborhood, telling people I was hoarding water during a drought, that I was some kind of self-appointed water baron, keeping everyone else thirsty while I lived in luxury. I knew the truth: my system wasn't connected to city lines at all. But the lies worked. Suddenly, neighbors who used to wave at me when I drove by now glared like I was stealing bread from their mouths. The final insult came when Karen announced she was hosting the annual HOA Garden Gala on her property, sending out invitations, bragging about lush fountains, koi ponds, and sparkling water features, all fueled by the very same municipal supply she claimed was being jeopardized by me. The hypocrisy was so thick I could taste it. But as I sat on my porch, watching her smug posts on the community Facebook page, I realized something. The timing of her party couldn't have been better. The dam on my land had a controlled release valve, one my grandfather had shown me how to operate as a kid. If Karen wanted to fine me for owning too much water, I'd show her exactly what too much water looked like right in the middle of her precious party. The morning of the gala, I woke up early. The kind of early where the sun hadn't even cleared the ridge yet, but the air already buzzed with anticipation. From my porch, I could see Karen's backyard lit up like a wedding venue. White tents, tables, draped in linen, strings of fairy lights curling around trellises, all for her self-congratulatory display of perfect landscaping. Trucks were unloading cases of imported wine, and I spotted landscapers frantically trimming hedges that were already cut within an inch of their lives. What no one realized was that every carefully laid decoration sat directly in the path of the dam's overflow runoff. My reservoir wasn't some pond in the woods, it was a 100-year-old retention structure that could hold back enough water to irrigate farms for weeks. And just below it, the natural grade sloped right into Karen's yard, like Mother Nature had drawn a bullseye around her party. I spent that morning double-checking everything. The pressure gauges, the lock on the release valve, the emergency shutoff system. My engineer's brain demanded precision, but my soul was practically vibrating with the thought of poetic justice. Around noon, guests started arriving. Women in floral dresses and wide-brim hats. Men in pastel polos with sunglasses dangling from their collars. I could hear the music drifting up the hill, all flutes and violins like some royal affair. Then came Karen's voice, shrill but practiced, sweet, bragging to anyone who would listen about how her garden was the jewel of the community. I leaned against the steel valve wheel, hand steady, heart pounding like a war drum, and whispered to myself, let's see how much water is too much. Karen, with a slow, deliberate twist, I cracked the dam open just enough to send a steady surge down the channel. At first, it was a trickle, harmless, invisible, but I knew once the pressure built, that trickle would turn into a curtain, and that curtain would come crashing down right as she raised her glass to toast her empire of lies. It started like a whisper, a low rumble beneath the music that no one paid attention to except me. I stood on the hill above, hidden by the tree line, watching as the first sheet of water slipped over the dam's channel and wound its way toward it. Karen's meticulously staged paradise. Down below, the violinists played on, oblivious, while Karen clinked glasses with her board members, her voice carrying over the crowd. This neighborhood thrives because we enforce standards. Unlike certain people who think they're above the rules, I didn't even need her to say my name every laugh. Every smug smile told me exactly who she meant. And then it happened. A swell of water broke through the slope like a silver wall, rushing straight into her pristine garden. The first hit was the koi pond. The ornate stone border cracked like porcelain, sending Karen's prized fish spiraling into the lawn like flopping jewels. The guests screamed, chairs toppled, linen-draped tables floated like lily pads as wine bottles bobbed between overturned plates of hors d'oeuvres. The string quartet tried to keep playing, but one violinist slipped in the mud and went down hard, her bow skittering into the flood. Karen shrieked louder than the chaos, standing knee-deep in water, mascara streaking as she shouted, "Somebody shut it off! Somebody stop it!" But there was nothing to stop. The flood was controlled, timed, precise, an engineer's revenge executed with surgical beauty. I watched as her floral centerpieces dissolved into mush. Her carefully pruned roses bent under the current, and her white tents sagged and collapsed like wounded sails. Every piece of her perfect world, every dollar she had flaunted to humiliate me, was washed out in a single, roaring sweep. And me, I just stood there, calm as a saint, coffee in hand, feeling the satisfaction of years of citations, fines, and harassment finally carried away by the tides she claimed I hoarded. The flood didn't just ruin Karen's party, it destroyed her grip on the neighborhood. By the next morning, videos had already gone viral on social media. Guests filmed themselves wading through waist-high water in tuxedos and gowns. Karen shrieking about terrorism while clutching a soggy handbag. Her koi fish gasping in puddles like abandoned treasure. Local news picked it up, calling it the Garden Gala flood, and reporters swarmed the gates of our subdivision. For once, the HOA's smug narrative wasn't about MIT, it was about Karen's arrogance, her fines, her obsession with control. Neighbors who had once whispered behind her, afraid of her power, now shouted openly about how she'd bled them dry with absurd citations. They'd seen the truth. She wasn't protecting property values. She was protecting her ego. When the county water board stepped in, the truth cut deeper than the flood itself. My rights to the dam and reservoir were ironclad, protected by state law. Karen, on the other hand, was found guilty of abusing her position to levy illegal fines, tens of thousands of dollars that now had to be refunded. She lost her presidency, her credibility, and most of her so-called friends, who turned their backs as quickly as the current had swept through her garden. As for me, I didn't gloat in public. I didn't need to. Every morning when I sip coffee by the water's edge, watching the dam glisten in the sun, I know I hold the power she once tried to take from me. The HOA still exists, sure, but it's quiet now. Humbled, Karen. She moved away months later. Her house sold for less than she bragged it was worth. The lawn still patchy from the flood. And me, I kept my dam, my water, and my peace. Because sometimes justice doesn't come from lawyers or meetings, it comes like a flood, washing away everything false until only the truth remains.